Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Huddle Up with Gus. I'm your host, former NFL quarterback Gus Frerotte, and welcome to the new 1631 Digital News Studio. You know, some people say, no news is good news. Well, I say to those people, you've never read 1631digitalnews.com. Go to 1631digitalnews.com to get your latest news, sports, music, and entertainment. And maybe even listen to your favorite podcast, Huddle Up with Gus. Check it out today at www.1631digitalnews.com.
Huddle Up with Gus is brought to you by Vegas Sports Advantage. Clients of Vegas Sports Advantage are winning big in 2021, and you can be a part of the winning too. As of June 1st, $100 bettors are up $3,700. $500 bettors are up $18,500, and $1,000 bettors are up $37,000, and $5,000 bettors are up $185,000. Become a client today by clicking the link in the description below, and use promo code HUDDLEUP to take 25% off your package today, thanks to our partnership.
Welcome to what surely will be a doozy of a matchup right here, sports fans. Whether your game is on the gridiron, at the diamond, or on the links, we can only say, welcome to this week's Huddle Up with Gus. 15-year NFL quarterback Gus Frerotte, passion for sports, has taken him on the field and behind the benches, playing for 7 NFL franchises with 114 TDs under his belt. Gus knows who the players are and how the games are won.
It's not every day you get to hang out with an NFL quarterback, huh?
Okay, sports fans, from the decked out and plush 1631 digital studios, it's kickoff time. So snap your chin straps on and get ready to huddle up with Gus.
Strange variety, but again, a big play to Leslie.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Huddle Up with Gus. I'm your host, Gus Frerotte, 15-year NFL quarterback, and I want to thank all of our partners. I want to thank 1631 Digital News, Sounder FM, and Vegas Sports Advantage. So please go to Vegas Sports Advantage, check them out, and put in my code HUDDLEUP, and go and get their data and analytics, I would say, is the best way to put it, because they're going to tell you what bets are working and where you can make the most money, because they are just making people some phenomenal money on their bets. So you get a 25% discount, which would be great. Don't come to me because I'm terrible at betting. That's why I never do it. And, it's kind of funny. I tried it before. I'm not good at it, so I have to go to these guys who are professionals and get the best odds. But today, we're talking to a guy that you may want to listen to when it comes to anything Patriots. He's been with the flagship station at 98.5 Sports Hub in Boston for a long time, talking about the Patriots. He is now doing it with an old Pittsburgh guy, Scott Zolak, as many of you may know. Went to Maryland, played for the Patriots. Now he's had a great career after sports up there. But joining me today is Bob Socci, right? Is that right, Bob? Bob Socci. So
you nailed it.
I had to like take a minute there because I wanted to say Socci so bad, but it's Socci. I'm glad you corrected me because, as I told you before, people screw my name up all the time.
Yeah, I think my family must have screwed it up because everybody else looks at it and says Socci or maybe Socci once in a while. But from the time that I was could say my name, it was Socci in our household. So. That's what it stayed as. Never changed the name for radio. Maybe it would have helped my career at an earlier age. But
right.
Whether people get it right or wrong, I've been called a lot worse than Socci or Socci. So
have they ever called you the Socci Bomb?
No.
That would be a good nickname, though.
Yeah, that would be a good nickname. I'd have to live up to it, though.
Yeah, I've had many of those Socci bombs, so those are that's a lot to live up to.
Yeah, it's kind of like gambling. I'm not a gambler either. I don't make enough money. I don't have enough money to lose to be a bettor. So
yeah, well, I'm as good as gambling as the slots. So other than that, I'm not very good. Push the button, hope for the best. So this is awesome. I'm glad to talk to you. So you grew up in kind of middle New York, upstate New York, like kind of, were you closer to the border of Pennsylvania or Canada for you? Where's Auburn?
Auburn's right in the middle of the state in the Finger Lakes region. It's about an hour and a half north of the New York-Pennsylvania border. If you drew a line, straight north and south, not too far from Western PA. It's about 2 hours east of Buffalo, and Auburn sat between Syracuse and Buffalo. And a lot of people that I grew up with were Giants fans or Bills fans. Yeah. And when it came to the NFL, very few Jets fans in my neck of the woods. I was somebody, though, who was a fan of another Pittsburgh guy, Western PA guy, Dan Marino. And our house, if you had a vowel on the end of your name, we rooted for you. So Marino was the quarterback of the Dolphins. And I was a fan of Dan's and began dreaming of being a sports broadcaster at a very early age there.
So talk to me a little bit about growing up in Auburn. What was sports like for you? Did you have like a big community? Like, a lot of people I talk to that are older, that are our age, kind of talk about, we used to ride our bikes around. We go get all our buddies in the neighborhood. We'd play every sport there was. What was it like for you?
Oh, Gus, it was that way. I lived in a neighborhood full of kids, 2 blocks from a huge playground that had, softball diamond, a large open field, basketball courts. In the summer, we played baseball all day. First, we drove rode our bikes to a local convenience store. Back then, it was, the term convenience store didn't resonate back then. There's pre 7-Eleven days, I think.
Right.
It was a place you went to buy your pack of baseball cards and take out that sugary stick of gum, and then stick those cards in the spokes of your bike with your glove, on the handlebars. And we would go to the store, get a drink, get baseball cards, and then all, rendezvous at the playground. We would play baseball in the summer. It was completely a pickup situation.
Oh yeah.
Totally unorganized by adults and organized by us kids. And then when the season changed, we started playing football. And then when the season gave way, of course, it's snow country up there. We played street hockey. I could never skate. I couldn't stand on skates. So it was street hockey. But it was one season to the next, and occasionally we try to play basketball. And that's the way it was from sunrise to sundown in the summer, and from the time we got home from school until it was time to go back home for dinner during the other parts of the year. And it was a great childhood. I have 2 young kids now, 9 and 11, and they get together with some of the kids in the neighborhood, but it's nothing like what I experienced as a kid. And I often went days with them,
Nothing like, well, I mean, my childhood was almost the same, right? That was like the 3 major sports we would go play. We didn't have soccer. We didn't have lacrosse. It had to be, maybe once in a while we get a sunny day and we go play basketball in the winter. But most of the time it was football whole way through till, and when I was growing up, Steelers were always in the playoffs. So, it was all the time. So it was the same thing, but it was great. In the summer, it was wiffle ball. It was baseball. It was, dodgeball. We had a court like that as well. We just, whatever we could do to get outside.
Yeah. Auburn was a blue collar community, and we had a minor league baseball team there.
Oh, did you? Who were they?
They were the Auburn Phillies when I was, first, a baseball fan at the age of 3, 4, or 5, and then eventually the Auburn Astros, and then became the Auburn Doubledays in the New York Penn League. So they were people that had just gotten out of college, young kids, basically starting their pro careers, and they would come to Auburn, New York. Some of the first Auburn Phillies that I watched included Lonnie Smith, who went on to the big leagues. Very few of them made to the major leagues from those days. But I was a kid who I went to those games. I hung out by the visitors' bullpen. I chatted with the relief pitchers and the backup catcher, and eventually got broken bats, and we take them back home and put the nails in the bats. And as you were saying, if we didn't have enough kids to play at the playground, we played wiffle ball in the backyard. We played hot box or pickle. And the
home run derby all the time.
Home run derby. Yeah. It didn't matter how many people we had. We found a way to play games back in those days. And like I said, it was a blue-collar community. People loved sports. Youth sports was very big there, particularly baseball. It was a lacrosse hotbed, one of the 3 parts of the country at the time where lacrosse was played. But I grew up in a household where my father loved baseball. He was a first-generation American. He was a Yankees fan primarily because as an Italian-American, the Yankees of his youth had all the Italian-American stars.
Yeah, they did.
Berra, Rizzuto. and the like. And so, that was our connection. My father was a lot older than most of my friends' dads, but our connection to span the generation gap was baseball. And it was very important in our household.
Yeah, my dad was a huge baseball fan. I mean, he taught me to throw everything, right? Throw it hard, throw it at their head. That was how I was taught to pitch. And then the next one, they won't even be close to the plate. But he told me he had minor league tryouts, which I don't know. I guess I believe him. But he was the same way. It was the same thing. He loved it. He would get mad when I'd walk somebody or strike out or whatever, but he loved the game. We talked about it. He was one of 15 kids. And I said, well, why didn't you pursue baseball? He said, I made more money in a factory than I did playing baseball. Unless you were the top dog, you weren't making any money, which I get, and it's probably still that way kind of in the minor leagues. They probably can't make that much. But, everything you talked about really resonates. And, one of the biggest things is really – how do kids today kind of get through? Because everything is so regimented and it's such a time schedule. You got to pay. I mean, if my dad had to pull 20 out of his wallet, I wasn't playing anything, right? Everything was really cheap. We did fundraisers to raise the money to go play everything. Now everything is so crazy expensive. I don't know how parents can afford it.
No question. I have friends whose sons are in AAU baseball. And the cost of playing AAU baseball would have been beyond our reach when I was growing up. Football, the equipment that's involved in all the sports, hockey especially. I'm in an area, of course, in Boston where youth hockey is extremely popular. And I don't know how, even, a middle-class family in a lot of cases can afford to keep up with the various AAU leagues and the specialized camps. And I think the part of it that disappoints me the most about sports in general, Gus, is the specialization that's associated with it. Because, there are parts of the country where I have friends whose, kids play high school baseball, and they're required to stay on the team to go to the high school coaches, indoor batting sessions during the winter, and they're not playing other sports. They're giving them up so that they can play spring baseball and summer baseball and fall baseball. And I have people that work in professional baseball. And a number of my friends, my best friend from Auburn is a scout in the major leagues. And he has a stepson who went to the Dominican Republic to play down there at their team's academy because he thought it would be a better experience than paying thousands of dollars to play in AU. And it's for those who can do it and those who do reap the benefits of that, certainly it's one of the paths to take. But for a lot of people, it's one they can't take, and that disappoints me the most. I talked to a lot of the guys in the Patriots locker room, bringing it back to football, and so many of them played as many sports as they could. They were involved in a lot of different activities, and they were allowed to play different sports. We have a son of an NFL Hall of Famer, Matthew Slater, whose father, Jack, played 20 years in the league as an outstanding offensive lineman for the Rams. And Matthew's one of the best at what he does on special teams. And he didn't play he didn't play tackle football until he was in his teens. I think he was 14 in high school. And he was allowed to do a lot of other things. And he eventually, followed his own love and passion for the game. But I see so many kids today who are specialized. They go down to one track. They don't play other sports. And then they reach a point where maybe, their size catches up to them, or they lose the interest in the sport, and eventually it doesn't turn out well. And in fact, often it backfires for them and their families. And I hate to see how you feel about that.
Yeah, I think that, when a parent has to dish out a lot of money, $600 to go play and then stay in hotels and everything, that puts a lot of pressure on a kid to go and try to be successful. Then how hard is it for a kid to go to his parents and say, you know what, I don't love this anymore. I don't want to do this. And one of our goals for our kids when they were growing up was just saying, look, we want you to play every sport. We want you to taste everything and try it, right? And then you'll figure out what you like. But to me, it was like, you have to play something, because I think sports teaches you so much that you don't learn in a classroom or from your parents. Somebody asked me about that and, what I thought about sports. I said, look, it's another person watching them. Like, why do kids in sports do less kind of drugs and, a smaller number of athletes will go and do, more of the bad things? I said, well, they have to earn the trust of their teammates. They have to earn the trust of their coaches. They have to earn the trust of their parents. And then there's more people not to let down. And sometimes sports really can emphasize what other things would never teach you. And that's why I loved it growing up. And the other thing too, is when you grow up and like you said, there's no parents, there's no coaches, right? There's just you and your buddies, and you figured things out, and you figured out how to do things right and just play the game. And I think we lose a lot of track of that when kids don't get the chance to do that, if you understand what I'm saying.
I do. And another part of it too, I think another dimension to it as well is you have to, there are so many cliches that are born out of sports. And among them, of course, is rising when you fall, taking another turn at the plate when you have a failed at bat, when you strike out, going back up there the next time, and you learn resilience and you learn determination. And as you said, you learn accountability. You're accountable to your teammates and your coaches, to the other people on your teams, regardless of the sport. And I do think in my own career, it's helped me because in broadcasting, unless you're one of the fast track stars, the enormous talents in our business who make it to the network level in their 20s and stay there for the duration of their careers, there are a lot of closed doors, a lot of rejection letters. At least for me, it took me many years to get to the NFL, and I followed this winding path, primarily initially through minor league baseball, and eventually landed an opportunity at the Division I level in college football, and parlayed that ultimately years later into an opportunity with the Patriots. But along the way, there were so many times when I wanted a job and didn't get it, and I went back, frankly, to the lessons learned playing sports. I was in a very good high school baseball program. We were state runner-up my junior year, state champion at the largest level in New York State. My senior year, I thought I could play college baseball. I went to the University of Dayton. In the fall, I played with the team and then got cut. And it was enormously disappointing. And I was somebody who, with this best friend of mine, the aforementioned best friend from my hometown, we used to go and hit ground balls to one another, go to the batting cage. We did it on our own. Nobody required us to do it. We did it on our own because of a passion for a love of the game. And he wanted playing professionally. I just wasn't good enough to play collegiately. But I took that passion and that work ethic, and I started to use it in the direction of my ultimate career in broadcasting. And as I said, I faced many times where I struck out, where I thought I had a chance to move up in minor league baseball, or I thought I had an opportunity at another job in football or television, whatever it might have been. But I drew on what I had learned playing sports to continue to persevere. You're disappointed, you're dejected, but you don't give up. You keep going. You keep pursuing your dream.
Yeah, I mean, it just teaches you so many lessons in life. And, you don't really accept failure, but you understand that it's going to happen, right? Nobody wins every game unless you're Tom Brady, I guess. And then, you just kind of keep moving on. But I love that. So tell me, I have a friend who does radio now here in Pittsburgh on KDKA. I don't know if you've ever heard of that station. But anyway, so
one of the original. Absolutely.
Yeah, so Larry he's been doing radio. They call him the voice of Pittsburgh. He does Steeler games and things like that. And I said, when you were a kid, were you the guy out there, like when somebody would come up to home plate and you would say, hey, here comes Bobby up to the home plate, we got him, and he said, yeah, I voice overed the whole time we were playing. Did you do stuff like that? Because I think when you do those things as a kid, it kind of carries over to your adulthood.
Always. I used to watch games in the basement, turn the TV sound down, and pretend that I was broadcasting the games at home. When I was playing with my buddies, I did the same thing. And again, I was so fortunate, speaking of my roots in Auburn, New York, I was in a community that had a really fantastic Little League baseball complex. And people there recognized, they'd heard me, announcing the games that I was playing with my friends. They knew that I wanted to be a broadcaster, people who were involved with our Little League baseball complex and program. And we had a press box with a PA system, and we had lights, so there were double headers. And so I would play in one game at 6 o'clock, say, and then for the 7 o'clock game, I would be invited by the commissioner of the league or someone else who was one of the league officials to come up to the press box, and I'd sit next to the PA announcer, and he would let me announce batters occasionally. Every time there was a foul ball hit out of play, I would say, please return all foul balls to the playing field immediately. That was the beginning of my career in broadcasting, let's say. That's where I started to develop that itch. And I continually wanted to
snow cones are now only 10 cents. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. No question. Yeah, no, absolutely. Snow cones were really popular back in that time. But I think about those days, and I've talked to so many of my colleagues, and everybody kind of started in a similar way. For us, sports were always a passion, broadcasting and an interest in broadcasting as well, equal in terms of our interests. And we played sports, we talked out loud, or we talked to ourselves, calling the play-by-play of the games we were participating in.
Yeah, I mean, I was never good at. I'd just sit and watch. But I can see like how that would change over. Like if you're watching a baseball game, a football game, whatever it was, I could just see like announcers like you and other people. That's what they would do. They would just voice over. They'd watch the replays. There's a pretty funny comedian, Bob Menery. Have you ever heard of Bob? He's he's like on Twitter and TikTok and things. And he takes plays from different sports and he voices over, but he puts swear words to it. And I laugh so hard because that's it's like, man, sometimes you want to watch a game like that, and I could just hear my dad cussing in the background, like when he was watching the Pirates and the Steelers, and like you want a little bit of that, like personality to it.
Yeah, but as a broadcaster, if you do it, it could short circuit your career. At least it's somebody like definitely. Me. But I have been on the air live for a college football game when one of my broadcast partners, unfortunately, let out a 4-letter word that begins with F and ends with K after the officials missed an offensive pass interference call on a late score. So I've been in a position where I've heard it on air, Gus, and it's certainly memorable. I'll never forget that. But I'm going to knock on wood and cross my fingers again and hope that I never, repeat that kind of mistake.
Yeah, right. I'm sure there's a lot of people in Boston probably say it enough of the times that you don't need to say it.
I say it so much to myself or out loud when I'm watching games as a fan. I generally, when I'm broadcasting, you get emotional, of course, if something goes well for the Patriots. When they win a Super Bowl, when Brady leads them down the field, or when he did lead them down the field to a late touchdown, or they come back against the Falcons, you get excited. Obviously, you want your emotion to match that moment, and you have to. You have a rooting interest in the team, even if you don't root on the air. And I'm not a broadcaster who has that style where it's over the top. I don't say we, I don't say they. I try to be professional, but you're not impartial. You're there. You're the voice of that team. You're the voice of those fans. They want to hear you get excited, and you have to. But when I'm watching games as a fan, I'm totally different. I'm somebody that does react. If the Bruins are playing and a guy takes a silly penalty, I'm cussing. If I'm watching a baseball game and a pitcher makes a bad pitch, to give up a late lead, I might utter a 4-letter word here or there. I try not to because I have young kids, but they hear them all too often. And it's just something that I learned that at a very young age. My dad was one of many kids and was a mill guy, and it just was part of the household. That's kind of how it was. And so you just kind of learn to live with it. But he always told me when I was a kid, he said, if you ever want to say that stuff, go to your room and say it. Don't say it out loud because you might get some soap in your mouth. Anyway, that's how it was, right? He could say it, but I wasn't allowed. Anyway, exactly. But it's interesting to me, like you talk a lot about baseball. You're on a state championship baseball team. I was as well in high school. Did you play football? Were you what was your fandom of football when you were younger? Because you became an announcer in the NFL, but you seem to have a really great love of baseball as well. And I'm wondering why it went to the NFL, not to MLB. I love the big three primarily. And then as I liked hockey as well. But baseball, football, and basketball were my three favorites. Baseball was really the first love that I had. And it was the sport that I played the best. I'm a very short guy, which I hear about all the time, by the way, from my partner, Scott Solak.
Well, I mean, Scott's 6'9". He's a massive human being.
He is, with a massive head. He's a huge man.
I wasn't going to say it. I'm glad you said it. Yes. I wasn't going to say it. I know he had a size 8 helmet.
He's enormous. People are taken aback. And so I work next to him all the time. We travel, of course, on the team plane, and he's always sending out snapshots on social media talking about my height or lack thereof on the air. So I wasn't gifted with size necessarily, maybe in the wrong direction. I had a thicker waistline than a lot of the kids on my teams and in my classes. So I was kind of on the pudgy side. I was short. I was slow. I was non-athletic for the most part. I was a pretty good baseball player by sheer will and determination. But otherwise, I just wasn't built to play other sports well. I tried out for teams. I think I played football in 7th and 8th grade on a modified team and wanted to play linebacker, and that didn't go too well. I tried to wrestle, and I think I got pinned in the first 30 seconds. And that was the end of my career there. I tried out for
you
basketball
also have to wear a singlet. Nobody wants to wear a singlet.
No. Especially with my body. So I knew broadcasting was the first love, but with football, I was one of those kids at the same time. Like when the season shifted, I was in front of the television from Sunday morning to watch. First, I had to watch the Notre Dame highlights. Do you remember when Notre Dame football would a condensed hour of highlights? Lindsey Nelson would voice the highlight package, and he'd say, "We move along to further action." I watched the Notre Dame highlights on Sunday morning. Then I'd watch This Is the NFL and This Week in the NFL. And then I would watch the pregame shows on CBS and NBC at the time. And I would watch football, the rest of the day on Sundays. And then on Mondays, my parents would allow me to stay up just in time to hear Howard Cosell do the halftime highlights on Monday Night Football. So I loved football. My dream was to be a broadcaster of all sports, primarily baseball, football, basketball. But in my career, because I got started primarily out of college on the minor league baseball path, I thought baseball would be the route for me. And I got to AAA at a relatively young age, and got a couple of big league opportunities in terms of interviews, but never got an offer for a Major League Baseball team. And then I started calling Navy football at the same time. And I fell in love with football. The buildup from one game to the next, the excitement on a game day, going to the stadium and seeing it come to life, the strategy involved, the intricacies of football and the team concept that didn't exist from where I saw it in baseball. I fell in love with that. And I think I started to call it well enough to consider, football broadcasting as a career after a number of years. And I started sending out football tapes. And one of them that I sent out was to the Patriots announcer at the time, Gil Santos. That was in 2008. So I'd been doing Navy for quite some time, about 12 years. And Gil was very complimentary. And as it turned out, my wife is from Boston. We ended up moving to the Boston area. And so I was still keeping all my doors open, all the avenues open. I was broadcasting minor league baseball, doing college football, college basketball. But we had moved to Boston. I had made the decision that, I wasn't getting to the major leagues in baseball. I wasn't getting that next job in the other sports. Let's go to Boston. I'll base myself there, continue to do the Navy games because they were kind enough to allow me to do that.
Right. And
then knock on doors, and hopefully I can get a break and get on the air in Boston. And that's exactly what happened. It took a while. I knocked on the door at the flagship of the Patriots, 985 The Sports Hub in 2009. I went in, sat down with the program director and his assistant. I left a CD with samples of my work. Again, CDs. It was a little while ago,
right?
And they heard some play-by-play of Navy versus Ohio State, Navy versus Army, and the assistant program director liked it. And I didn't hear from them for 3 years. I just wanted anything.
Oh, that's some patience.
One shot, a pinch hit appearance, doing headlines. I didn't hear anything for 3 years, and then Gil Santos retired in 2012, and I got an email out of the blue from 985 The Sports Hub. They wanted to hear more of my work. I sent another, batch of play-by-play samples. They listened to it. They liked it. They interviewed me, and they hired me. Had baseball called first, I would have gone to Major League Baseball. But the Patriots were the first team, and 985 The Sports Hub, the first big market station to give me an opportunity. And I'm so thankful, Gus. I'm so thankful that I wound up in the NFL and wound up with the Patriots here in Boston. I can't imagine being in a better situation for my family or me. And now that
yeah, because if you would have went to the Jets, it probably wouldn't have been the same story. It'd have been a lot of more L's than W's, that's for sure. Yeah. But what a franchise you went to. Hey everyone, I appreciate you listening to Huddle Up with Gus. I'm your host, Gus Frerotte. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back with Bob Socci.
Fabulous.
All right,
Fabulous.
Ready, Bree?
Yep, go ahead.
All right. Hey, everyone. We're back after our commercial break there. We're with Bob Socci, the voice of the Patriots on 98.5, the Sports Hub. He's been doing it since, I think you said, 2009? Is that right? Or 13?
13 was when I got hired. 2009 was when I first knocked down the door of the Patriots flagship station, 98.5, the Sports Hub.
Now, why did you go to the Patriots? Were you always a Patriots fan, or were you just kind of wanted to go up, and that you thought that was a good place to go? Because, there are a lot of cities that could have used announcers, right? I'm sure there's people retiring all the time. So why the Patriots? Did you have an in there? Did you know somebody?
Well, it's funny because when I started broadcasting, and I would bounce around from one minor league city to another in minor league baseball, and when I was calling the Navy football games, people would ask, "What team do you want to broadcast for?" Or "What's your favorite team?" And I'd always say the team that hires me. So That was my mindset. I grew up as a Mets fan first in baseball, but had the.
Who's your favorite Mets player?
As a kid, Tom Seaver.
I got
I had a Tom Seaver uniform cards when I was 3 years old. Tom Terrific was my favorite. Eventually, Rusty Staub, Hug McGraw, and then Lee Mazzilli. As I got older, Lee Mazzilli, he was kind of the matinee idol out of New York. Played in Brooklyn.
I'm finding my Seaver. Look at this. I got my Seaver right here.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, my sons and I collect cards, so I got a bunch here.
Yeah, unfortunately, my mother threw away all my Tom Seaver baseball cards.
So many people say that. So many people say, like, Mom just threw my whole shoebox out of all the cards. Can you imagine, like, what cards you would have? Like, I mean, I remember as a kid, like, my sons and I buy some old wax packs every now and then just because it just brings back memories, right? You're pulling out the old piece of gum, and they're, even if it's from the 80s or whatever, they weren't great, but it's so hard to get like a 70s card or a 60s card that was like original like that. And I do it real slow. They're like, "Dad, why are you taking so long?" I'm like, this is like my childhood right here. It brings me way back.
Oh my gosh, no question. We'd go through the baseball card pack, and you'd always wind up, there were like 3 or 4 players who were in every other pack of cards that you got.
Right.
And, when you'd hit on that 1-star player, it was an incredible feeling. But the only baseball cards that I have, I think, with Seaver, and I still have a binder, but I don't think they're worth very much. They were later in his career with other teams. And by then there were so many baseball cards in print. Nowadays, I think the industry's kind of, diminished in terms of the value of baseball cards.
Was his nickname the franchise with the Mets? He was
the franchise, yes. Tom Terrific.
Yeah.
And I just finished reading his biography by Bill Madden. It was a good read, and quite a guy. He was somebody. He was a lot of times you're disappointed by your sports heroes. He was a player that in the end, and now that I know more about him, even years later, and following his death, he kind of validated those feelings that I had for him as my first sports hero, quote unquote.
Yeah. Yeah. So who was it in football for you?
Well, early on, because I was a Dolphins fan originally.
You were just Marino?
It was eventually Marino. I like the Dolphins. It's a bizarre thing. I mean, my brother was a Steelers fan. At that time, when I was a kid, the Steelers, the Cowboys, the Raiders, and the Dolphins were the best teams in the NFL. The Rams were good too back then in the 70s, I think, the Vikings. So my brother was a Steelers fan, and in the AFC, I had to pick a rival, and I couldn't pick the Raiders. I just didn't like the Raiders.
Right,
they were the bad guys, right? So I liked the Dolphins colors, and I became a fan of the Dolphins, and then they drafted Dan Marino. And in my house, with my father in particular, again, if you had a vowel on the end of your name, even though Don Shula might not have been an Italian-American, well, we rooted for Don Shula. And then, of course, they got Dan Marino, so there's no doubt about it. But as I got older and started broadcasting college football, any allegiances, frankly, to the NFL went out the door until, while I was at Navy, Bill Belichick became the head coach of the Patriots, and they won Super Bowl 36 because at the time, Navy was awful. The football teams had gone through a stretch of 30 losses in 33 games from, I think, 2000 through 2002. And Steve Belichick was a longtime Navy coach and scout. Bill's dad. Bill grew up in Annapolis.
Right.
Went to practices and watched Joe Bellino, a Heisman Trophy winner, and then Roger Staubach. And his dad was a legend at the Naval Academy and was still around, even in retirement, every day. And because of the Patriots' success under Bill, and I think coupled with the fact that Navy football at that point, at least on the field, you didn't have a lot to be happy about, be proud about. At the time, there was a lot to be proud about the midshipmen off the field always, but they were going through such a rough stretch. People really, cling to the success of the hometown kid, Bill Belichick, and of course the association that the Patriots had. They were the team that took the field in the Super Bowl as a team, not introduced individually. So I really became interested in the Patriots. Obviously, they were a great underdog against the Rams, and back then they were, I think viewed a lot differently than they would be in future years. Yeah. So I started reading a lot about Belichick and the Patriots, and I wouldn't say that I was a Patriots fan, but that's how I first learned of Gil Santos and started listening to his games, because I would buy the NFL Films discs and watch 3 Games to Glory, the series on the Super Bowl champion Patriots, and I'd listen to Gil Santos, and I was enraptured. I went to Gillette Stadium for the 2003 AFC Championship game when Ty Law picked off Peyton Manning 3 times. And it's funny because I had tickets through one of the Colts, Marcus Pollard, tight end for the Colts. His business person who handled some of his business interests was a friend of mine, and he got me a ticket to the game. And I flew from Baltimore to Foxborough, to Providence, and then went to Foxborough. And I was in the stands in the Colts family section listening to Gil Santos call the Patriots, and I was just mesmerized. And so that's when I started to become a Patriot fan in a sense, and then moved to Boston, started following the Patriots, of course, on the news regularly. And so when I got the opportunity, because I'd come from Navy, a lot of people associated, the Belichick name with me being hired, but it really didn't have a lot to do with it, if anything at all. The station made the hire. But because I was living locally, and because I had learned enough about the Patriots recently, they thought, well, this guy's kind of a local. We like his work. Maybe we can sell him as, one of Boston's own. And it's funny because I was spending most of my time at that point traveling and going to the Mid-Atlantic every week. But I was still a resident, I guess, technically of New England, and knew enough about the Patriots. And, of course, with the Navy connection, made for a good sport, I guess, initially. And I had to prove myself, but that opened the door for me, I think.
Well, yeah, you don't have the accent, right? You have the you don't have an accent. So they're like, can we sell this guy as a Boston person, right? Because you always think of Boston as such a strong accent. But my question for you is, you did all these Navy games. How many years did you do Navy games?
I did 16 seasons of Navy.
16. Football. So which Army-Navy game do you remember being like having the most energy? Because they're all special, right? They're all incredibly special. And, just all the men and women in uniform there. And it's just, it's a rivalry, but it's not, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so special. What do you remember most about that game?
Gus, you hit it on the head. It's a rivalry, but at the end of the day, they're brothers in arms. They want to – Army players want to beat Navy more than anything in the world. Same thing with Navy players. There's nothing more they want to do in their athletic careers than beat Army. That's the one thing you're measured by as an athlete at the service academies. How did you do against Army if you go to the Naval Academy? And that's ingrained in them from day one. Everything around the academy yard in Annapolis says beat Army. The weights that they lift in the weight room, the signs on the walls in the locker room. So many of the traditions outside of the military protocols and traditions revolve around that game. And the passion and energy in the stadium, it's palpable. You can feel it at 9 a.m. when you get there. And it's electric from the time the midshipmen and cadets, everybody in the brigade of midshipmen, all the Corps cadets march onto the field pregame. They march onto the field in their company formations, which a lot of people who've watched the game have seen it on television. When you're there in the stadium, it's such you're gripped by the emotions, the pride that you feel, how impressive those young men and women are that are before you. They really are the best and brightest in this country, and they're called to a higher mission. They're called to do something that's more important than themselves, and to pay any sacrifice toward that end. And there's that feeling of reverence. That feeling goes on throughout the day, and then it culminates, of course, at the end of the game. And again, they're going to hit each other harder than they've ever hit anybody in their lives when they play that game. It's physical.
No
it's
doubt.
all out effort, regardless of the score, from the start of the game to the end of the game. And then when it's over, the two teams stand side by side. They play their alma maters and they sing their alma maters, and the winning team goes second. And, the losing team has to stand in front of the Corps of Cadets or the Brigade of Midshipmen in the stands, their hands on their hearts, and the players are singing their alma mater, and the tears are flowing down their streaks. It's probably never a worse feeling in their athletic careers. And then they have to run across the field and stand by the victorious team, and there's probably never a better feeling than the one that those winning players are feeling in that moment. It's just an incredible experience. If you ever have an opportunity to go to it in person, it's a bucket list event. It's a bucket list game, but it evokes so much pride, even when you watch it on television. And I can't say that there was one game more than any other that elicited, more excitement than the others. I will say that the 2001 game, for obvious reasons, is extremely memorable. Both teams were mired in I think double-digit losses that year. Navy hadn't won a game. I think Army had won one going into the contest. President Bush was there, visited both locker rooms, and then presided over the coin toss. And in fact, it was a Pittsburgh kid, Eddie Malinowski, who was the quarterback at the Naval Academy. The story of he's kind of a quintessential midshipman, went on to serve as an officer in the Marine Corps, but a kid about my height, too short to play for your typical Division I team, probably too slow as well, but he was an option quarterback at the Naval Academy. And when they flipped the coin, instead of saying heads or tails, I think he might have called heads. He said, "Heads, sir," addressing the commander-in-chief. With that kind of respect, and that always it's one of the most memorable moments was that scene on the field. I think John McCain was a Naval Academy graduate, the longtime senator, and of course a prisoner of war was there as well. And there was such a solemn feeling during that game throughout, and the Army wound up winning that 2001 contest. So it wasn't memorable from that standpoint for me, being the Navy announcer. But that's the one Army-Navy game more than any other that I remember. And it was incredible to walk, to look back and see what happened to a lot of the players that were in that game. True heroes.
Yeah. And so when you've seen all these players come through Navy, right, obviously you remember their names. You've called their names. They've, of course, scored touchdowns, made interceptions, do all these things. And then as they graduate and go on, and you see their names, for other things, do you remember that? Does that bring it back? And what is that like for you? Because it's memorable calling football games, because those games are always special. And then you see these guys go on to do the amazing things that give us all the freedom that we get today. And so how does that feel, like that you remember and you've got to know a lot of these guys?
Well, you're very proud of it. You think about rewards in sports, and I've had a chance to call 3 Super Bowl wins, 4 Super Bowls in all for the Patriots. But, the feeling of pride and also sadness at times when I see, what happened to some of the players that I either broadcast as football players or other athletes that I interviewed during my time. Maybe someone like a wrestler, Travis Mannion, who was killed in combat, who was interviewed as a halftime guest, or a lacrosse player like Brendan Looney, just to name a couple. There were football players who were killed as well. I remember sitting next to a young lineman named Ron Winchester, who was from Long Island. Ron's dream was to be a Marine like his grandfather. Ron was an offensive lineman. He again, quintessential. He was the quintessential Navy midshipman and a quintessential offensive lineman.
Right.
It's just heart and soul, salt of earth, good guy, unselfish, the kind of guy that you want your son to be. And Ron wanted to be a Marine. He always dreamed of being a Marine like his grandfather. I believe his grandfather's name was Dominic Gotti. Ron was later killed in the Marine Corps. And then on the flip side of that is the pride you feel and how good you feel when you hear from other players who might have been listening to the Air Force Navy game because they woke up in the middle of the night in Iraq or Afghanistan, and they pulled in the broadcast on their computers to listen on the internet. And I heard from a number of guys that did that. And the connection, too, for me with the players didn't really start until they graduated, because when they're at the academy, they have no idea who you are.
Right.
You're just
everything's so regimented. They're not like on their iPhones all day like a lot of kids.
And your interaction with them is pretty limited, and they just know you're one of the media. Maybe they know you're the football announcer who travels with them, but they could care less. They just want to get on the road away from the academy. They just want to get some sleep and then play the game. They're going to enjoy their freedom a little bit, in the hotel the night before a game with their families. But after they graduate, you're the connection when they go abroad, because the games aren't maybe broadcast on the Armed Forces Network on television, or they can't get them if they're stationed overseas, but they can listen on the internet. And I found that a lot of players who I really didn't have a relationship with in Annapolis, eventually connected with me years later. There was a wide receiver that just recently was given his first ship command, Tyree Barnes, and he had actually come to the Patriots for a short time after he graduated for training camp work. I got a chance to work out with the Patriots and spent a little bit of time in a camp a number of years ago, and went to the CFL for a brief while to audition there with the Toronto Argonauts. Didn't work out, but he stayed in the Navy, and he is now in command of a ship, a minesweeper. And I just saw the news that he'd been promoted. So that's a real cool.
Awesome. So do you try to, when you're calling a game, try to bring back plays or memories from the past, because that midshipmen are listening to this all over the place?
You relate it to a lot of your own experiences, and the recent experiences in a game, which is what you do, I think, typically with any team that you call.
Yeah.
But there are times certainly where, we did reminisce or recall things that were not football related per se, but more related to what you and I are talking about. But I think the big thing for me that I found too is that, you're an escape for people there. They appreciate the fact that you treat the academy and its tradition and the mission that all those midshipmen have taken on with reverence and respect. That's very important. But at the same time, they want to hear you say touchdown, Navy. They want you to get excited when there's a touchdown, and they don't mind if you criticize when the team's playing poorly or a coach makes a bad decision. Like I said, there was a stretch where they lost 30 games in a span of 3 seasons, and there was no sugarcoating any of those losses. And for the players, they don't want to hear the players in particular. Some of the fans, they appreciated the talk about how hard they tried and how dedicated they are. The players don't want to hear that. They don't want to be seen as overachievers. I found that out from talking to a number of players and coaches. When they're playing, it's like those games are the most important things in their lives in the moment. They don't love football or competing any less than a player at Florida State or Clemson or Alabama. And any of the traditional football powers, Michigan, Notre Dame, they're at the Naval Academy in a lot of ways, because in a lot of cases, because it's their chance to compete against the Notre Dames of the world.
Right.
They try to prove themselves. So
that is true. Yeah. That offense is probably a lot of fun to call too, because how many times if you watch that offense, you're calling the game and you have no idea who has the ball?
I learned, Gus, very early to keep the binoculars on, on the quarterback and the fullback, the whole play, because a lot of times you get confused. It's easy to go with the fullback, and the next thing you know, the quarterback's running on the outside and he's pitching it to what they call a slot back. And it's funny, I went from broadcasting Navy games where the mids didn't even attempt a single pass to calling the Patriots, where they would go up tempo, hurry up, and Tom Brady would be throwing the ball 40 times.
Yeah, right.
40 times.
Hey, Huddle Up with Gus listeners. Manscaped, they sent me, they hooked me up with a bunch of tools and formulations for their package 3.0 kit. I want to show you guys what's in the perfect package, right? We all think we got a perfect package, but they sent me the perfect package 3.0 kit. And I want to show you what they sent me. So it was crazy. It came in this great box, and you can see what it says. They will thank you, because they send us this awesome trimmer. They sent us, stuff that makes you smell better. And then, they sent me this great, some boxers even, which you get, right? Protect them. And then, they sent me this cool sack, I guess you want to call it, to store all your stuff in. So it's been great. Manscaped sent me a bunch of product, and you can see it all on here. You can go to manscaped.com and put in the code Gus Frerotte, that's GUSFREROTTE, get 20% off and free shipping when you use that code. But you can get a kit, you can get individual items like this way cool groomer that has a little LED light, ceramic. These things come apart, they're waterproof, you can do a lot with them. So Manscaped is great. It's funny. I remember when I was playing with the Denver Broncos, and I'm not going to mention any names, but there was a gentleman who was playing on our team, and if he ever hears the story, he'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But he brought his own clippers in one time, and he used it to trim his beard up and his goatee and everything, and he had them there for about 2 or 3 weeks, and he goes in around the corner, he walks in, and there's another player that is actually manscaping with his beard trimmer. So, one of the things is you don't want to use the same trimmer down there that you use up here. So he kind of freaked out a little bit, and he said, "Hey, how long have you been using that tool there?" And he said, "Well, it showed up here about 3 weeks ago, and I've been using it ever since." So, there is a lesson learned that, don't leave things out. And probably if it would have just said Manscaped on it, we wouldn't have had that issue. But it's probably one of the funniest taking care of your balls stories I've ever heard or been around in the locker room in the NFL. So it's a great story. But I always said there was no way to know. There was no name on it, and the guy was just using it, and another guy was using it. It was not good, but it's a heck of a funny story. So one of the best I've ever heard in my 15 years playing in the league. But there's so many great things about Manscaped and what they're doing, because guys, you got to take care of yourself. Even though I got gray hair and getting older, but you still have to maintain some sort of grooming, right? And so we all work out. For me, I like working in my yard, doing those things now that I'm retired, getting a little sweat on and everything. You want to smell good, you got to take care of yourself. They got some great products. This one, a little ball deodorant. We all need that here and there. After, working in the yard, taking a hike, doing a walk, whatever you do, it's a great thing. But there's so many great products. I want to thank Manscaped for sending them to me. The Lawnmower 3.0, obviously, you can use it anywhere in your body, but I'm sure you guys have all seen the commercials. But this is one just letting you know that the Lawnmower 3.0 comes with the perfect kit. You can buy the lawnmower by itself. You can buy all these products individually. They even sent me this wonderful shirt. You can see the back. Your balls will thank you. And then here's the front. So it's an awesome shirt. They have great gear. And you know what? Sometimes you can just sit back, take care of your balls a little bit, and read the paper. So I think Manscaped even has their own daily news, which is great. So don't forget that you can go to the code Gus Frerotte, and that's GUSFREROTTE, and you can save 20% on any products. The perfect package gift set, and you can save 20% and get free shipping. So use the code Gus Frerotte, GUSFREROTTE. Hey, everybody spells my name wrong. They even spelled it wrong on the back of my Pro Bowl jersey. So, I gotta help you guys out. So don't forget how important it is that you use these products. Take care of yourself down below and have some fun, right? There's nothing closer to you than your little buddies. So use the lawnmower, use the code Gus Frerotte, save 20% and get free shipping, and order some great Manscaped products.
40 times a week. So it was a big adjustment from that standpoint.
Yeah, no shotgun at Navy, barely.
No
single wing shotgun there, that's for sure. So then you go to the Patriots, right? And you've just seen, I mean, what an experience. What a franchise. You see this success and you get to call these games. And there's been some incredible games since you've been there in 2013 even. And you've seen Super Bowls, you've seen AFC Championship games, all of that. Compare the Army-Navy game to me to a Super Bowl, like the feeling you get, because both are exciting, but has to be in a little different way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny, though, I did draw on my experience calling an Army-Navy game, or at least I told myself that it was important to have called Army-Navy before the first Super Bowl 49, when the Patriots played the Seahawks in 2014. Right. It was February 15. My first season was 13. The Patriots got to the AFC Championship. And then the next year, of course, they won the Super Bowl against the Seahawks. And I remember going into that game thinking about all the games I had called previously. You know, I was a guy in minor league baseball for 20 years.
Yeah.
And for a long time, Navy didn't play in a lot of big games outside of the Army-Navy game. I had called a few victories over Notre Dame. But I did think to myself, that Army-Navy game, there was never a game played that's more important than that game to the fans and to the players in it and the coaches and the audience. That's a big game. And that's a game that still is a national game with national implications. And I thought about that, and it helped to ease some of the nervousness that I had going into Super Bowl 49. But you're right, that the scale of a Super Bowl it's so different. I think they're both meaningful in their own ways. It's hard to compare the two because the military dimension, the fact that so many of the Army-Navy games that I called too, we were in two wars, so you knew that those seniors were graduating and potentially could be in harm's way very soon. When in calling a Super Bowl, though, the scale of it is you spend a week on site, and it's from one press availability to another, one event that night to the next. So many fans, so much media, such a long wait at the stadium on game day. You just have to get there because the security's immense. And
it's probably more than the Army-Navy game.
Army-Navy game, especially if the president is going to be there. Obviously, it's a long process to get into the stadium. But nothing like the Super Bowl, because I think of the number of media who are there at that game. It's crazy. And, walking around a stadium, like I remember going to University of Phoenix Stadium at the time at around 10 in the morning, and the game didn't kick off until, late afternoon Pacific time. And, I had all this time to kill, and I wanted to be there early because I didn't want to I don't want to be rushed.
Right.
So we got to the booth, and there's like 5, 6, 7 hours to kill before the Patriots and Seahawks are going to kick off. And, I walked that stadium. I must have walked around the stands and up and down the steps a dozen times, went to the gift shop. It was closed, went back to the booth, returned to the gift shop, anything to kill time and not think about how nervous I was, because by then a lot of the preparation had been done. But, just the scale of it's so different. And naturally people remember the Malcolm Butler interception at the end of that game. And you hear that play replayed over and over and over again here. And the same thing with the Pats comeback in Super Bowl 51 and their win in Super Bowl 53. Whereas for me, the Army-Navy games, the highlights from those games, I remember them, but I don't hear them all the time like I do from the Patriots wins. And the number of people that know about the games too. It's just.
And I know you do a podcast, you do a blog and all that stuff. Do you listen to yourself a lot to make sure that do you edit yourself?
I try to. Unfortunately, it probably doesn't show enough as much as I like.
I'm sure it does. I'm sure, but it's hard. Like sometimes for me, when I do a show and I have to listen to myself, it's kind of difficult.
It is. I cringe a lot of the time when I hear some of the calls. In particular, I mentioned the Butler call. I still cringe now when I hear that, even though so many people, locally at least.
Did your voice go? Did you get a little higher in your voice?
I kind of lost control. I was in a bear hug. Our producer was bear hugging me in the middle of the play, and I just kind of started screaming. I called in. And the funny thing about that too, it happened so fast. If you remember the play, Wilson's in the shotgun. everybody thinks they're going to run it.
Run it. Yeah, exactly.
Lynch had just gotten stopped on the goal line. Remarkable play by the Patriots. Dante Hightower, with one healthy shoulder, was able to keep him out of the end zone. And so you figure, and then, that followed the Jermaine Kearse circus catch. And I was upset about that because I thought that pass was incomplete. Butler knocks it away, but Kearse somehow catches it after the ball's bouncing on his legs, and he bobbles it and he gathers it in. And so there's dejection about that. There's the handoff to Lynch, and then there's the sense, okay, the Seahawks are going to hand it to him again, and this time he's going to get in. The ball snapped to Wilson, and he throws it. He really doesn't take a step back. He's in the gun. He catches it, plants, and boom, he's looking for Lockett. And the next thing you know, there's this crowd, and Butler, drives on the ball, and Zolak starts screaming, "I can't believe it," my partner. And I'm like, "It's intercepted by Malcolm Butler, intercepted by Butler." And I start screaming, about the play. Patriots have possession at the 1 with 20 seconds to go. And after the game, I turned to our producer, and I kept asking him, "Did I get it right? Did I say Butler? Did I get it right?" And he's like, "Bob, just enjoy it. Let's go celebrate."
Right.
I went down the field, and, the confetti was still falling. But it's I listen to games, though. I listen to regular season games, preseason games, Gus. And I think it goes back to the conversation about sports. I've always wanted to be coached. As a young announcer, and still to this day, I'm very open to constructive criticism. So I would reach out to a lot of my heroes in the business, people, role models, people that I respected as broadcasters and eventually peers and colleagues, and ask for their constructive criticism, for them to be candid with me, and tried to incorporate some of the suggestions and advice that I heard. I think
it's the only way you get better, right? I ask people that all the time. Please listen to my show. Tell me what you think. What can I do better? What kind of questions can I ask better? I research. I don't write questions down because I want the show to flow. I just think that it's better just to have a conversation and find out a little bit about you. So wrapping up everything here, you've told us your story, how you've become the voice of the Patriots. Tell me a little bit about everything that you're doing now, because football is just in the fall, and you got to stay busy all season. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm in a situation here, Gus, where I broadcast play-by-play for only the Patriots. I occasionally do some college basketball, but as a father of 2 young children and with a wife who has a pretty busy career of her own and passions of her own, we kind of have the best of both worlds. And for me, professionally, I do like the lifestyle of the NFL, and I mentioned this earlier about the difference between baseball and some of the other sports and pro football. I can have dinner every night with our family, except for when we're traveling on a Saturday, Sunday road game. And I do work for the team and the station in the offseason. Of course, COVID has changed a lot of what is done. There's work for the team website. There's work, as you mentioned, involving podcasting, writing for the station blog, some of the other writing that I do separate from that. And some of it is not football related or even sports related for that matter.
Well, I saw you wrote one on your cat. His name was Leo, right?
Leo, yes, exactly. Yes, the late Leo.
The late Leo.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like me. You're a dog person.
I am, yes, and we have a great dog, and we have great cats too. I've become a cat convert. We had a cat that passed away, and I wrote about what it was like with my kids. My family had been away for a week away from home, and the cat got very ill, and how attached the kids were to him. And and one of the things I like about sports too, and one of the things I love about whether it's the Naval Academy or the NFL, like our locker room with the Patriots, and there's so many good stories, so many good people that I've been introduced to and gotten to know. And I love telling the stories of those people as well. And the same thing with the stories of people or cats, as it were, outside of the booth. But there's a lot of charity work. There are a lot of client events, commercial work that's ongoing. A lot of my counterparts, a lot of my colleagues around the league are far busier than I am, and broadcast college football and the NFL in the same season, then do college basketball and Major League Baseball. I just have a situation for me that has worked well to this point. I've been very lucky, and I really appreciate where I landed and how it's gone so far.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And so please let our fans know how they can follow you and where they can go to find you.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Bob Socci, and that's SOCCI, BOB, and at 985thesportshub.com. We have a podcast, The Gridiron and Beyond, and do appear regularly on the station. In the offseason, host of a Sunday football show with former linebacker Ted Johnson. We preview the draft, recap the draft, get into free agency, and kind of the hot stove football season. So there is that work on air. And then, like I said, do a number of other events for the station and the team as well. But 985thesportshub.com is where you'll find most of our work archived.
Yeah, so that is awesome. You guys have a big game coming up when the Patriots play Tampa Bay. I know that's going to be crazy up there. You know, it's like, okay, what do we do? This is our rival, but yet this is the guy that built our franchise. So it's going to be pretty interesting to watch that week happen when you guys have to play Tampa Bay.
Gus, it's been a topic on our station for months. I mean, the Brady story will never end here in New England. His career and then the accomplishments, and then of course the departure and what he's done since leaving the Patriots for the Buccaneers. So we're looking forward to it. October 3rd, fourth week of the season. Everybody I know wants a ticket to that game, and I'm going to try to keep my emotions in check. Like I said earlier, I'm the Patriots' voice, but I certainly owe so many thrills to watching Brady.
There's no doubt
to ever do it, and a good guy too. You as you may well know, Tom is generally a nice guy. I wish he was
very nice
back in the Patriots, but life goes on. And
we were both at Wes Welker's wedding with all the offensive linemen, so that was a fun night. That was a lot of fun that night. So Tom is a great guy. He's always been super nice to me, and he's very for as much success as he's had, when you meet him, you just feel like he's a humble guy, and you know what I mean? Like, you can talk to him, like you can have a beer with him, and it's all good. But Bob, we really appreciate you coming on, sharing your story with us. I hope everyone can follow you because I think the Patriots are going to be a little bit better again this year. I think they got some good parts back, and it's going to be an exciting year up in Boston.
I hope so, Gus. I think so too. They certainly spent a lot on free agency. The drafts have been questionable in recent years. It looks like they have a draft class that, they all come highly recommended. They all have a lot of potential, but it looks like this draft class, with Mac Jones at quarterback, number 15, certainly holds a lot of promise. But the quarterback position, as you know better than I, that's the position right now that really I think their season hinges on. They'll be a lot better defensively with the two tight ends they've added and all the money they spent on free agency. They should run the ball well, be very good defensively, but it all comes down to the quarterback.
Yeah, and they have a coach who doesn't like to lose. So, this guy prepares harder than anybody in the league. So it's going to be I think he's going to want to get back up on top. So, Bob, I appreciate you joining me on Huddle Up with Gus. All my friends and fans out there, don't forget to tell everyone to like and subscribe the podcast, Huddle Up with Gus. Go to my website, huddleupwithgus.com. and check us out and all of our great guests, including Bob Socci. So, Bob, I appreciate you joining me today, and thanks for coming on.
Gus, thanks for having me. Enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was great. I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time. That's it, folks. Another episode down. We want to thank all of our partners, 1631 Digital News. We want to thank Sounder FM and Vegas Sports Advantage. Don't forget to use my code HUDDLEUP and get 25% discount when you join. They'll make you some real money. So have a great day. We'll see you again next week.
And that's a wrap, sports fans. Thanks for joining in the fun at the 1631 Digital Studios for another action-packed Huddle Up with Gus, featuring 15-year NFL quarterback Gus Frerotte. Huddle Up with Gus is proudly produced by 1631 Digital Media and is available on Apple Music.